Race number 5 at Ascot. It's Perth. Race number 8 for our Singapore viewers. It's over the 1200 metres and looking forward to this race. So we've got a galloper in Furious Dame in a lot of form. King of the Palace is a Saturday class galloper, although having not won now for 377 days. High Limit, new stable now with Grant Williams, has got a lot of class about it. And I was really impressed with the way that No Smoking raced first up as well. Of course, has won second up before, so it does look at a pretty good race on paper. The replay that we're going to take a look at, though, we mentioned that she's been in some good form. I speak of Furious Dame. You take a look at her last 4 runs, 3 seconds and a victory. She was beaten last start by Distant Memory in a very strong field, and we'll take a look at that performance now.
Also following the leading pair as they come to the turn, Calabria Joe and Malibu Style in the straight. 250 to go. Furious Dame has raced up to Mr. Motown. Distant Memory. Calabria Joe's trying to come on but struggling a little bit to get there, and so is Malibu Style and Mad Brad, and it's Distant Memory and Furious Dame. Distant Memory just in front from Furious Dame. Calabria Joe coming late, but Distant Memory in front.
Was just beaten by a better horse on the day on that occasion. Furious Dame did nothing wrong. Drawn nicely here, Barrier 2. Does go up in the weights. Will carry the 57.5 with Clint Johnson Porter to ride, but she's got a lot of class about her, a lot of fight, and she's also won at the track and distance as well. Outside of her, as I mentioned, King of the Palace. This is a Saturday class galloper. You look at the form lines behind Hobart Jones, Stocks, Lunar Eclipse, Secret Nova, and also Volkov. They are very strong. The blinkers come off here. 2 kilo claim as well, with Aaron Mitchell taking the ride, so the 57.5. King of the Palace is going to be very hard to beat in this race. High Limit, Grant Williams now trained. You take a look at the first up record, 5 attempts for a victory and 3 placings as well. Has won twice on 6 attempts at the track and distance. The recent trials show that this horse is ready to go again, just beaten a length by the listed Placid Arc winner at Let It Slip as well. So I'm looking forward to seeing how High Limit responds in this new stable. And I mentioned No Smoking off the top as well, which is beaten a half length by Smarty Wilson first up. Has won second up before and has a good track and distance record. Drawn nicely, Barrier 8 with a 54 kilos. And Brad Parnham riding there looks certainly a horse that can play a part in the top 4. Let's take a look at the selections for race number 5. I'm going to go Furious Dame on top from number 2, King of the Palace, number 4, High Limit, and 7, No Smoking. Race number 6 is Perth. Race number 9 for our Singapore viewers. It's over the 1200 metres. An interesting race to analyse here. There's a few negatives for most of these gallopers that you would like. When you look at She Rules All, her best performances are sort of carrying that 55 kilos less. She has to carry the full 58.5. Bourbon Dynasty doesn't like the inside and seems to enjoy the 1400. Well, Drawn, Barrier 2 drops back to the 1200. A couple of negatives there. Big Caroline hasn't won for the 529 days, which isn't ideal. Sky Rhythm drops back to the 12 as well. So the things that you'd be looking for, there's a couple of negatives in each of the runners, which just makes a few question marks when you are trying to find your on-top selection for this race. The replay that we're going to take a look at, though, last starter, we threw this horse out. It had been a while between drinks. William Pike took the ride, didn't let us down. It was Bourbon Dynasty.
Costa to Costa, Karen Delight, Stormy Grace, Regal Gossip, zip to the lead. Here's Bourbon Dynasty, though, winding up at the 200 metre mark and has got the leader within its sights. Pike goes for home and Bourbon Dynasty races past Regal Gossip. A gap then Stormy Grace, Asian Lily, but Bourbon Dynasty appreciating here, racing out off the fence today, pulled away.
It was a really good performance by this mare, as I said, as she managed to get the job done. But the concerns, as I mentioned, inside gate, Barrier 2, drops back to the 1200 metres. She had 8 attempts at this distance for only 1 victory. And Ross Price said post-race there that he was tempted to tip her out because she'd had a long campaign. So for mine, there's just a couple of warning alerts going off in my head when I look at number 2, Bourbon Dynasty. Number 1, She Rules All, I thought was really impressive last start. Didn't stop at all behind Joyful Hope. But again, as I mentioned off the top, had that claim, so only carried the 54. Has to carry the 58.5 kilos here with Ben Kennedy to ride. Barrier 4, a nice draw for her. Is she going to carry this weight, this mare by Universal Ruler? We'll have to wait and see there. The one that I really like in the race is Big Caroline. As I mentioned, hasn't won for 529 days. Doesn't have a great track and distance record either. 5 attempts for only 1/3. But you go through the form lines behind Den D, Good Morning and Cool Passion. They are strong enough now. The tricky gate isn't ideal, Barrier 9. But if Jared Noski can find a place, so I can see this mare running on strongly and being the one to beat over the 1200 metres. But again, the record doesn't read great. 13 attempts for 1 victory. Classy Cat, this is probably the only galloper when you go through that everything is a positive. Track and distance, 6 attempts, 2 victories, 3/3. Track and distance, 1 race, 1/3 as well. The Barrier not ideal in Barrier 10, but I thought last start behind Cool Passion over the 1200 metres was a good performance, and it's the one where most boxes are ticked, so certainly I give it a bit of a chance. Let's take a look at the selections. I'm going to go with number 3, Big Caroline, from number 7, Classy Cat, number 1, She Rules All, and 2, Bourbon Dynasty. Race number 7 at Ascot is Perth. Race number 10 for our Singapore viewers. It's over the 1200 metres. And for mine, this is race of the day. The most competitive to take a look at. We've got an impressive 3-year-old in Cubit and Cundy. McFry's has shown a little bit of form in its time. All G, you look at the form lines behind Perfect Reflection and the barriers that it's had to jump from in its early career. It's got its claims in here. Culverin, a last start winner. Forever Diamond's impressive as well. Canny Time's been racing well. And Massachusetts as well. Went out as a short price favourite last start. Was narrowly beaten, but does have some strong form lines behind the Cobbler and also Rosmar Martini as well. So on paper, this should be a very even race. Let's take a look at the last start winner though, Culverin, that was able to win by a short neck in a strong race on that occasion as well. Randy Tan teaming up with Fred Kersley, and we'll take a look at that replay now.
Rocket Hot Breezer in the straight. Tucky's Lad Fashion Girl go up to join Intercity Disco. 2 lengths away, Atlanta Blue. War God, they're brushing a bit of leather together. And down the outside, Culverin's coming with a run at the 100 metres. Tucky's Lad grabbed the lead. Culverin right over the top. Levels up with it. Culverin went to the front and got there by a head. Culverin scored from Tucky's Lad.
Tacked the line strongly there, as you could see. Just picked up those gallopers with that nice turn of foot and certainly showed a little bit of class. It is going to need to improve again though with this field. As I mentioned, there's some classy runners. Cubit and Cundy, a winner at Pinjarra. Then you look at the form lines behind Reverend John and also Senso. Saturday form lines there. First run at Ascot, the blinkers come off, but I was really impressed with the recent trial behind Military Rock. I think this horse will be very hard to beat first up. All G, as I mentioned, was only beaten a half length by Perfect Reflection. Jumped from barrier 10 on that occasion. Had to do a bit of work to cross, and then the next start was forced to go back from barrier 14 and clearly needed a spell from that run. Drawn nicely here in barrier 5 to 56.5 kilos. Recent trial winner as well. There's a lot of positives for All G. You can certainly run a race here. Number 7, Forever Diamonds, finished second behind Ros Martini. We know how well that she raced. Then came out and beat Drooper by 3.5 lengths, which has since won a midweek race as well. And recent trial behind Ruby Can Run. It showed enough for mine to think that she can certainly come back, this filly by Almaha, and certainly win barrier 6 to 55.5 kilos. Canny Time, as I mentioned, the form lines are good enough there with War in Paris and also Fermentation. From barrier 4, Simon Miller's just got some perfect gates for the day. Should be able to sit in a nice position and attack the line strongly. And Massachusetts put a line through last start, even though it finished second at Narrogin. A few issues before the race. Both jockey and horse had to be passed fit by the stewards before racing and then finished second. So for mine, I'm happy just to say that it might have been a few things that are going wrong on that occasion. 54.5 kilos, Paul Harvey to ride certainly has to come into consideration. Selections, I'm going to tip number 1, Cubit and Cundy, from 7, Forever Diamonds, 8, Canny Time, and 10, Massachusetts. Race number 8 is Perth. Race number 11 for our Singapore viewers. It's over the 1400 metres, and this is another competitive way to finish off the day over the 1400 metres. The replay that we're going to take a look at, Young John has now finished its last 4 starts. It's finished second. It has been very unlucky. Looked again the winner last start before being picked up by Poonamoo, and we'll take a look at the closing stages of that race now.
Led Rancho Man, but here comes Young John. He quickly gathered them up now, races to the lead, Young John, and put a length on Fabulistic. Then came at the head of the others, Poonamoo, who's starting to run on when the race looked to be pretty much all over, although he's coming at the rate of knots, Poonamoo. Young John's in front. Poonamoo, though, storming down the outside. Poonamoo. I think Poonamoo might have...
As I said, look, the winner for the majority of that race just picked up over those final stages. 4 seconds in a row now for Young John. I think Warren Wilson will be hoping to break that. Drawn nicely here in the barrier 5, but does meet some of these horses worse off in the weight. So with the claim going from Aaron Mitchell and putting the senior jockey in Peter Nucky on board. Outside of those, number 1, Silver Plated, of course, the lightly raced 9-year-old, has had the 12 career starts for 3 victories and 5 placings. So things to take note: 4 attempts at the track for 2 victories and a second, and has been first up on 3 occasions for a first, a second, a third as well. Barrier 7, the 59 kilos. Weight isn't an issue. This horse carried 59 in the Group 3 Strickland over 2,000 metres and was only beaten 2 lengths by Fuchsia Bandana, so it has a lot of class. This horse is ready to go. It'll be very hard to beat. Terra Force, last start, broke a long drought. That was over the 1,300 metres. Beat Furious Dame, which we've tipped on top a little bit earlier on in the card as well. So watch Furious Dame, see how she goes. That'll be a nice lead in for Terra Force. Barrier 4, 3 kilo claim to Randy Tan certainly suits. Another one that I'm willing to forget from last start is Mambo Katsi. Had to be passed fit before the race as well. Hit its head in the trailer on the way there in the float. Before that, 2 seconds and a victory. The second behind Dendy was very impressive. Barrier 2, 53 kilos with a claim to Clint Johnson Porter, going to be hard to beat as well in this race. Taking a look at selections for the final race of the day, I'm going to tip number 1, Silver Plated, from 10, Mambo Kadzi, number 7 in Young John, which, as I said, has had 4 seconds in a row, and throwing in number 4, Crown Choice, which has a Saturday class form, 1, 10, 7 and 4. Well, that brings us to the end of another edition of Box Seat, so it is time now to take a look at the best bets, and I'm going to be going to the middle of the card and hoping that number 1 is our lucky number. Race 4, number 1, Red Paddy, should have got the chocolates last start, should do it again this start as well. And race 5, number 1, Furious Dame, has been very consistent with a 2 kilo claim, should be pretty hard to beat. Race 4 and race 5, both number 1 there. Make sure you do follow us on social media. All of your late mail will be up on Twitter, pictures on Instagram and Facebook as well, and perthracing.com.au for all your event information. There are some great events coming up in the month of February and March as well. I'm Adam McGrath. Hopefully I found you a couple of winners. Be back again later on in the week with another edition of Box Seat.